Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, so today we're going to be taking a look at the Juniors World Champion deck. I don't get as much chance to look at juniors and seniors as I would like to on this channel, though I do get a few requests here and there for it. But I thought with Worlds having ended, you know what? We do need to have a look at the deck which took home the title in juniors. And it was Pikachu and Zekrom, only fitting. This was one of the biggest and best decks of the weekend, very obviously so. Nice that it managed to take home one of the crowns. It was Haruki Miyamoto, and he took it home with Pikachu and Zekrom. So it's all built around, and this one might shock you, Pikachu and Zekrom. You see, Pikachu and Zekrom is a very good Pokemon. For free lightning energy, it does 150 damage, and you get to search your deck for free lightning energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon. Or you can use your GX attack and do 200 for free energy, which is fine. But if you go ahead and get 6 energy on there, then they all must be lightning. You do 200 to the active and 170 to the bench. That's huge, especially given that the Dedenne GX was huge all weekend. Yeah, that gives up 2 prizes and has 160 HP. You can KO that on the bench. Some decks were playing Mew to stop this. If you weren't, this had a huge GX attack. And we do, before we move on to the other Pokemon, need to have a quick look at the combination of Thunder Mountain Prism Star and Tapu Koko Prism Star. You see, Thunder Mountain Prism Star reduces the attack cost of lightning Pokemon's attacks by 1 lightning energy. Tapu Koko Prism Star, if it's on the bench, you may pop it in the Lost Zone, and then you get to attach 1 lightning energy to each of 2 bench Pokemon. So you've got Pikachu and Zekrom on the bench, use Tapu Koko Prism Star, there's an energy, attach your energy for turn for the hand, and then whack down a Thunder Mountain Prism Star, and all of a sudden you're actually using full blitz turn 1. And you've only used Thunder Mountain, Tapu Koko, and the energy attached from your hand. That's how you get going so quickly. Now, in terms of backup attackers, there was one very exciting one, Raichu and Alolan Raichu. One of these new tag team GXs that came around in Unified Minds. It was legal really for the first time at Worlds. Now, Raichu and Alolan Raichu also has an attack for free energy. It does 80 damage, but if it became active this turn, you do 160 and you get automatic paralysis. And in a format where we've lost cards like Guzma and Ace Roller, it is far more difficult to play around special conditions than it was before Worlds. This could win your games. Now, the GX attack, free energy 150, switch to your bench. 5 energy 250, switch to the bench. Generally not as good as Pikachu and Zekrom's. Maybe if you desperately need to hit 250, you could. There is no real reason to use it unless you really want to get out the active without the extra effect. Generally, Pikachu and Zekrom's tag team GX attack is better. Now, that's pretty much it in terms of attackers. The only other real attacker we had here was Tapu Fini, and Tapu Fini was an extremely specific Pokemon. It's there for Blacephalon. It is a Blacephalon counter. It does 100 damage for free energy, but if there is an Ultra Beast on your opponent's side of the field, you do 100 for a single energy, and of course with weakness that is 200 and a one-hit KO on Blacephalon. Blacephalon was one of the best decks this weekend. It matched up pretty well against tag teams, so having an answer to get a KO for a single energy was pretty gosh darn huge. There was also a Hooper, and again, this was a backup attacker, but it's a very specific one. For a single colorless energy, it does 10 damage base, plus 20 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon that has an ability, so up to 130 for 1 energy. But that's not for every deck. It's fine. There are some games where it will be useful, But that is it. In terms of attackers, make no mistake, it's Pikachu and Zekrom and Raichu and Alolan Raichu. Now, there were a couple of other Pokemon there to help out. There was a Zeraora. There were, in fact, 2 Zeraora. And Zeraora's got a lovely ability that gives free retreats to any of your Pokemon that has a lightning energy attached. Now, it did also have a decent attack, free energy 160, and it gives up 2 prizes rather than 3, so there will be times you attack with Zeraora as a 2 prize rather than 3 prize option. But the ability there, especially with Raichu and Alolan Raichu needing to switch in and out of the active regularly, that is what you're looking for, ladies and gentlemen. That is the main reason to play it. There is also a Marshadow here, and Marshadow is largely for the ability. If it is on the bench, you may discard it and all cards attached to it, and then you get to discard a stadium in play. If your opponent has a stadium you don't like and you really want to get rid of it, this has got your back rather nicely. Maybe Shrine of Punishment popping extra damage down, or Power Plant to stop your Dedenne. Speaking of which, you played 4 Dedenne. 4 Dedenne here just gets you rolling. You're playing a lightning deck. You're going to be playing Electromagnetic Radar anyway. Discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for 2 Pokemon GX. Or EX, but you're not allowed to play EXs because they've all rotated out. So if you're already playing that to search out your lightning Pokemon, you might as well play a bunch of Dedenne that you can search out as well. Gives you a lot of extra speed. And then the aforementioned Tapu Koko. Lots of different Pokemon in the deck, but really the 2 attackers. Now, in terms of trainer cards here, you're a lightning deck, and there were some lightning tricks that you would play. I've already mentioned Thunder Mountain Prism Star, I've already mentioned Electromagnetic Radar, but you also had Electro Power here. An item card that means your attacks do an extra 30 damage to the active. So here you can get a one-hit KO on Blacephalon rather than being 30 damage short. Or if you find yourself against that new Naganadel, you can drop 2 Electro Power and then you get a one-hit KO with a Pokemon that should be 60 damage short. If you play all 4 in one turn, you can actually use full Blitz to get a one-hit KO on a Reshiram and Charizard. It's not terribly likely, but it can happen. We also see 4 copies of Volkner. Volkner is a supporter card that lets you search for a lightning energy and an item card. So it lets you grab something like your Electromagnetic Radar, your Electro Power, etc. Pretty gosh darned important. Great in lightning decks. Now, in terms of other supporters, we saw 4 copies of Judge, and this is something we saw from a bunch of Pikachu and Zekrom decks throughout the weekend. Puts both players down to a hand of 4 cards, replacing Marshadow that would often have been played pre-rotation in this deck. And the theory is, you try and get a Pikachu and Zekrom setting up using full Blitz, then you drop a Judge. And then your opponent can't set up, but you're getting energy with full Blitz, you're already set up, and you're good to go. It's alright. It means that you also get hurt. You have got Dedenne, and playing 4 of them plus everything else should mean you're alright. It's fine, and it clearly worked for Haruki, and a bunch of other players saw success with this over the weekend, but I find it interesting that you could have played like this pre-rotation, but players didn't. It is the best they can do under the circumstances, and clearly it worked. Also, 1 copy of Cynthia gets you a new hand of 6 cards. In terms of stadiums, we've got a mix. We've got the aforementioned Thunder Mountain. We've got our own power plant. When we're set up, we drop a power plant, turn off our opponent's abilities on GX Pokemon. And especially if you can drop this and then judge your opponent before they're set up, that could be absolutely huge, because then they can't play something like a Dedenne to get out of it. And then 2 copies of Lysander Labs. Now, this was a great tech that a lot of people played over the weekend, because something like Jirachi would put itself to sleep using its ability, and then use a skateboard to free retreat. Yeah, you can't with a Lysander Labs in play. And unless your opponent's got their own stadium or Marshadow, it's staying out. Also really good to stop your opponent doing extra damage with stuff like Spell Tag. Very nice. So 3 different stadiums, a little bit strange. Now, there were 4 copies of Custom Catcher, as there were in pretty much all non-fire decks this weekend, it is the best way to play with gusting at the moment. It really is as simple as that. You play two at the same time, it drags one of your opponent's Pokemon into the active. It is not the best gusting ever, it is not as good as stuff like Guzma, but it very much is the best option we've got at the moment. We saw 2 copies of Energy Switch. This is really, really good after a Tapu Koko, because if you've got Pikachu and Zekrom in the active, you can then Tapu Koko Prism Star and Energy Switch one of the energy up to the active, makes it far more likely that you'll get that turn 1 full blitz that you're looking for. 2 copies of Pokemon Communication to swap a Pokemon in your hand for a Pokemon in your deck. You play enough Pokemon here to make it worth it. Searches out your non-lightning Pokemon. And 1 copy of Cherish Ball. And here you see why we need Pokemon Communication. Cherish Ball will get any GX. Electromagnetic Radar will get Lightning GXs. But there's a whole bunch of non-GXs in the deck. Yeah, that's where Pokemon Communication comes in. We then see 1 copy of Reset Stamp to put your opponent down to a smaller hand if they take a big lead. 1 copy of Stadium Nav, flip 2 coins for each head, search your deck for a stadium, put it in your hand. We're playing a bunch of different stadiums, that's kind of useful. 1 copy of Switch to get out of the active, and 1 copy of Tag Switch, which very much works like a better, depending on how you're looking at it, Energy Switch. Instead of switching 1 energy from one Pokemon to another, it switches 2 energy from a tag team Pokemon to one of your other Pokemon. Really depends what your board looks like, I suppose. Congratulations to Haruki Miyamoto. A great finish with a deck, and we all expected this to be good, but it's the only age division where Pikachu and Zekrom won, and I thought that was absolutely worth having a gander at. But I'd like to know what you think about this, about the World Championships, about the deck in general. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. Well, you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.